Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're venturing into the fascinating and sometimes, pretty unsettling world of ancient Mesopotamia.
We are, specifically looking at their rituals against witchcraft.
Exactly. And we've got a really rich collection of source material here, including some detailed excerpts focusing right on these practices.
Yeah, the texts are quite revealing.
So our mission, basically, is to really get a handle on the beliefs and, the practices surrounding witchcraft back then.
And how they tried to fight back, essentially, the countermeasures.
Right. These often really elaborate methods they came up with. Okay, let's just dive right in.
Sounds good. Well, maybe the best place to start is how the Mesopotamians themselves actually defined witchcraft. What was it to them?
Good point. What did they call it?
Our sources point to these Sumerian terms. You have usha, which often gets linked to, believe it or not, spittle or poison sometimes.
But biddle.
Yeah. And this term, or related ones like usha and ushlev, eventually sort of solidified. The logogram usha became the standard way to write kishbu, ru, and rusu.
Okay, so kishpu, ru, rusu. Those are the Akkadian words for witchcraft, or aspects of it?
Pretty much, yeah. Different facets of harmful magic. But that connection back to ush, to spittle, is really significant.
Why spittle, though? That seems, well, kind of specific, almost mundane for something like witchcraft.
Well, the emphasis on spittle, there's a phrase, ushuria, meaning cast spittle, seems key. It wasn't just saliva in their minds.
Okay.
It was seen as a substance that could be, imbued with power, both harmful power and sometimes, interestingly, life-giving or healing power, too.
So ambivalent.
Exactly. Think of it like a physical vehicle for your intention. We even find descriptions of spoken witchcraft being mixed with cast spittle.
Ah, okay. So it's not just the words being spoken.
Right. It's the words plus this physical act, this substance. One text mentions it directly. It makes the curse tangible, in a way.
So the act of, spitting while you curse someone, that was seen as a really potent combination.
That seems to be the idea. And it's not just folk belief. The texts link this concept to major deities, too, like Ea, the god of wisdom and magic.
Ea, how so?
There are connections drawn between Ea, the power of incantation, the magical spoken word, and spittle. His son, Marduk, is even praised as the lord of incantation, spittle, and spell.
Wow. Okay, so it's deeply embedded in their magical thinking, even at the divine level.
Definitely. It really underlines how much they believe in the power of both the word and physical substances in magic.
Okay, so they have this concept of witchcraft, quipu, often linked to this visceral image of spittle. But it sounds like it wasn't always some shadowy, distant threat.
No, it could be very immediate.
But was the line always clear between, say, what we might call good magic, like healing, and this bad witchcraft?
Yeah.
You mentioned a gray area in the outline.
Yeah, that's a really crucial point. Where did acceptable magic, maybe even state-sanctioned magic, and the illegal, harmful stuff begin? It wasn't always obvious.
So what falls into this gray area?
Well, the sources talk about rituals for things like love magic, ramu is the term, or rituals to bring back a runaway slave, maybe weaken your opponent in a court case.
Practical magic, almost, but maybe a bit coercive.
Exactly. Or even things like attracting customers to your tavern. These kinds of rituals existed in this morally ambiguous zone.
Interesting. So were these spells written down alongside the main religious texts?
That's the thing, mostly no. You generally don't find these gray area rituals in the official exorcist manual, for example, or in the big royal libraries like the one at Nineveh.
Suggesting they weren't quite proper.
Suggests they weren't part of the officially sanctioned high-level religious or state magic. But they do turn up in other libraries, private collections maybe.
Meaning people knew about them and probably used them.
That's the implication. They were known. They circulated.
And does the evidence suggest that even the official exorcists, the Ashipu, might have known about or even used these gray area rituals sometimes?
It seems likely. The evidence points towards exorcists studying this stuff, possibly using it when they thought it was necessary, or maybe just to understand what they were up against.
So it wasn't a strict black and white, good versus evil magic system.
Not really. It highlights a much more nuanced picture of magic in Mesopotamia. There was this significant gray zone of practices that different people might have used.
Right. It wasn't a simple dichotomy. Now, thinking about their worldview, this idea of evil, was witchcraft the only thing they worried about causing problems? Or was it part of a bigger picture?
Oh, definitely part of a bigger picture. Babylonian medicine and magic, which were often intertwined, recognized loads of potential causes for illness, misfortune, you name it.
Such as?
Well, divine anger, actions of various demons or restless ghosts, breaking a taboo, bad omens. Witchcraft was a major one for sure, but it wasn't the only explanation they reached for.
And were these things seen as separate, or could they be connected? Like, could witchcraft cause demonic possession in their view?
Absolutely. They saw these sources of evil as interconnected. Being the victim of witchcraft could make you vulnerable to demons, or perhaps the illness caused by a witch manifested like a known disease. It was a complex web of potential afflictions.
Okay, so witchcraft is one major player in a whole host of potential evils. What about those classic images, the evil eye and the evil tongue? We hear about those a lot in other cultures. Were they big in Mesopotamia?
They existed, definitely. The concepts were there. You have Emiel or Lejanu Lemutu for the evil tongue, and Egiel or Inu Lemutu for the evil eye.
But were they central to anti-witchcraft specifically?
Interestingly, maybe less so in the later Akkadian incantations compared to earlier Sumerian ones. The evil mouth Kalael pops up more in Sumerian texts aimed specifically at countering slander.
Ah, slander. That makes sense as a kind of verbal attack, similar to a curse.
Exactly, and slander was definitely seen as something witches did. In fact, sometimes a witch was symbolically represented in rituals by a little clay model of a tongue.
Wow, that's a potent image. And the evil eye.
In the Akkadian text we're focusing on, the evil eye often seems more like a direct demonic force, or it represents that hostile, envious human stare that can cause harm.
So less the witch using the evil eye and more the eye itself as a danger, or maybe just the general fear of a harmful gaze.
Kind of. Though the fear of the evil eye was very significant in Sumerian anti-witchcraft stuff. And even in later Akkadian texts like the big ritual series Maklu, you still get descriptions of the witch roaming around, peering into houses.
Yeah.
So the harmful gaze is still definitely part of the picture.
Okay. And wasn't there another source of trouble? Something about breaking taboos? A self-inflicted curse?
Yes, exactly. The concept of mamatu. This wasn't necessarily someone attacking you with magic, but more like you messed up. You broke an oath, violated a taboo, maybe unknowingly, and brought a curse down on yourself.
And how does that connect to witchcraft?
What's really interesting is that some remedies were seen as effective against both witchcraft and mamitu. This suggests they saw some kind of overlap or connection between external magical attack and internal spiritual contamination, if you like.
Is there shared symbolism or ritual action?
Yes. The big one is burning. In anti-witchcraft rites, they'd burn figurines of witches or symbols of their magic.
Right.
And in rituals against mamitu, like the ones in the series called Shirpu, they would burn symbolic items representing the sin or the broken oath.
So fire as a purifier in both cases?
Exactly. Destroying the source of the problem, whether it's the witch's effigy or the symbol of the transgression. In fact, ancient scholars actually paired these two big ritual series, Malklu for witchcraft and Surpu for mamitu or the Bon.
That's fascinating. Okay, so if someone suspected they were the target of witchcraft, Kishbu, what could they actually do? What did the prescriptions look like?
Well, there was a whole category of texts specifically called Prescriptions for Undoing Witchcraft, and Pashurdi Kishpi. We actually have tablets that preserve some of these.
Like recipes?
Sort of, yeah. Like BM 47695 plus Draga, which lists ingredients and actions. It's similar to a manuscript found way over in Bozazkoy in Hittite territory, showing how widespread these ideas were.
Give us some examples. What kind of ingredients are we talking about? Anything weird?
Well, some says things like ardadiddle plant and yeshurapi, which might be a type of apple or quince. The instruction is often tasakma, meaning you pound them together.
Okay, pounding plants.
Yeah. And you see variations in how things are written, like kwanashali or kwanshali for possibly the same type of reed or related plant. It suggests a living tradition with some flexibility.
Any hints about specifically magical plants?
Sometimes in damaged texts, we can potentially restore phrases like ishipi, maybe meaning plants against witchcraft, or even shkamukipi, plants of witchcraft. Though outside rituals, that phrase could mean plants used for evil magic.
Ah, so context is everything.
Always. There's also a possible restoration, shamikichi pashadi, plants for undoing witchcraft, which matches later logographic writings like Ushabahala, Usharu.
So specialized botanical knowledge was part of the exorcist's toolkit. What about the actions, the rituals themselves, beyond just mixing ingredients?
Oh, they could get quite elaborate. We have one description involving an ankle bone.
An ankle bone? Seriously?
Yeah. The patient, the person suffering from the witchcraft, takes this ankle bone, treats it with oil, and actually clothes it like dressing a tiny doll.
Okay. Why? What's the goal there?
The text suggests the aim is to win over some female figure, to get her on the patient's side.
Who is this female figure? A goddess.
It's a bit ambiguous, probably demonic, but with human-like qualities. The ritual seems aimed at countering a male sorcerer.
Ah, so maybe they're invoking a female witch to fight the male witch.
That's a plausible interpretation. The patient actually speaks to the ankle bone, praising how well it's been treated, and begs this female figure to turn the evil magic back onto the male sorcerer who sent it.
Like recruiting a rival power. Fight fire with fire.
Exactly that kind of logic. It's fascinatingly complex.
That is wild. Were there other, maybe less unusual ritual objects or common actions?
Definitely. We see instructions for making leather bags, like amulets or phylacteries, filled with various things.
Like what?
Sometimes medical plants, sometimes insects, minerals, even human bone in one case, specifically mentioned as a remedy against depression.
Human bone against depression. Wow. They really linked the magical and the psychological, didn't they?
Very much so. And depression or listlessness could certainly be seen as a symptom of witchcraft. There are also lists of drugs, usually powders, mentioned for the same kinds of afflictions.
And any specific ritual vessels or tools?
Yes, there's mention of something written Doug Sale A-G-A-Z. It used to be read differently, but now scholars think it should be read upu, meaning a disposable pot.
Disposable. Why is that significant?
It suggests that you put the bad stuff, the disease, the witchcraft residue, maybe even the ingredients that have absorbed it into this specific pot, and then you get rid of it completely. Throw it away, maybe break it, ensuring the evil can't come back. Containment and disposal.
Makes sense. A clean break. What about the words used, the incantations? Were there common phrases?
Yes, certain phrases definitely pop up repeatedly, like Shaya Shia Da, the Ul Tim Jubiza, which means something like, who stands at my evil side? It evokes this feeling of being accompanied or targeted by a malevolent presence.
Gives you chills a bit.
Yeah. And there's a variation, Sha Yahia El Tim Ipusha, who has done the evil deed against me. Very direct, accusatory language aimed at the unseen perpetrator.
Okay, let's get into some more concrete examples then. What were some of the specific rituals and incantations they actually performed? Can you walk us through one or two?
Sure. Well, there's a prescription mentioned for undoing witchcraft that is eaten in the flesh.
Eaten in the flesh, so ingested witchcraft, like poison.
It suggests that, yeah, a belief that magic could be slipped into food or drink and affect you from the inside. Then there's an incantation called Kishpu Zarutu,
Which means
root witchcraft. It seems to deal with deeply embedded magic, maybe something causing paralysis, which gets personified in some versions of the text. Like the magic itself has roots inside you.
creepy. What else?
There's an incantation starting, "You are furious," which was often recited over salves or ointments that were then applied to the patient.
Ah, so the words empower the medicine.
Exactly. And they use specific anti-witchcraft drugs, Ubruta drugs, which we also know from their pharmacological lists.
Okay, so combining potent words and potent substances, any rituals involving figurines, those seem common in magic.
Oh, absolutely. Figurines were huge. One ritual involved making figures of both a warlock and a witch. These were then put inside a skull.
Inside a skull.
Yeah, collected in a skull, sealed up. And then the ritual continued at a specific place associated with hand washing, which usually implies purification.
Intex. What about involving the gods directly?
Very common. A key ritual was performed before Yanarsha, the sun god of justice, remember. You'd set up censers, pour beer libations.
Offerings.
Right. And then you'd make figurines of your suspected sorcerers out of tallow, wax, sesame pomace, bitumen, various materials. You'd write their names on the figurine's left shoulder.
Why the left?
The left side was often associated with bad luck or evil in Mesopotamian thought. Then you'd stick thorns into the figurines, bind their hands and feet.
Symbolically disabling them.
Precisely. And then you'd declare directly to the god, Hama, these are the figurines of my sorcerers, presenting the evidence, as it were.
And what happened to the figurines then?
Often burned or disposed of using special water of extinguishing in a mandel to nullify their power.
Wow. Were there incantations that called for, like, divine retribution?
Yes. One powerful line is Iodu Liktunkunu, which means, may the mountain overwhelm you, addressed to the witches or sorcerers.
That's pretty final.
It is. Another really dramatic incantation describes tin stone and zalakdom. We're not entirely sure what these were, maybe meteoric iron and obsidian, descending from heaven. bringing the actual distilling rituals with them.
Like the solution comes directly from the gods.
Exactly. And this incantation often mentions using plants like tamarisk, mashkal soapwort, and date palm symbolically to release the step, maybe implying restoring natural order that the witchcraft disrupted.
That's beautiful imagery, actually. The heavens sending help. What about turning the magic back? Was that a common goal?
Very much so. A core principle. There's a ritual using mepashti, dissolving water or purging water. You mix this water with oil and various plants in a special vessel.
Okay.
Then you make clay figurines of a male and female witch. You might place inscribed Zalakwa stones on them, maybe put some of the plants in their mouths.
Symbolically feeding them their own medicine, perhaps?
Could be. Then these figurines are carried, maybe in a procession, while reciting an incantation to Zukakipu, the scorpion constellation or deity.
What's Scorpio? What's Scorpio?
Scorpio is often seen as a powerful, protective figure, capable of stinging back against evil. Then, the crucial part, the figurines are thrown into the river.
Washing them away.
Exactly. And you make the declaration, witchcraft is undone, finished. There are other incantations, too, where the speaker directly addresses the witch, saying essentially, your own spittle, your own magic, your own words, I'm turning them back on you. They invoke powerful plants like your limb heals 1,000 to help undo the harm.
So multiple strategies. Divine intervention, symbolic destruction, purification, and reversal.
Absolutely. They threw everything they had at it. Another approach involved the speaker declaring their own power or origin, like one incantation where the speaker says they come from the Ulaya River, sort of establishing their own authority to challenge the witch.
Like, you can't touch me, I'm protected by.
Something like that. Or standing on basalt stone before Amma, holding protected plants like lupine and olu, the Heals 20 plant, maybe holding sacred beer, and directly cursing whoever attacked them.
Assault. Specific stones mattered too.
Seems so. Stones, plants, metals like tin, substances like sulfur rutitu, which was used against both witchcraft and mamitu, reinforcing that connection. Even scorpion parts, like the Manzitsu Kokipi, hand of Scorpio, could be used.
It's an incredibly rich pharmacopoeia and ritual toolkit.
It really is. Burning figurines before shamash was a recurring theme, often followed by purifying the patient with water, maybe involving incantations like shamash anutuapisha, Shama, these are my sorcerers, atuno mu, you are water, and ayu ayo, I have spat out.
Spitting out the evil, back to spittle again?
It comes full circle, doesn't it? There were even rituals for specific types of witchcraft, like Zakudu magic, sometimes performed when certain constellations like Ursa Major, the wagon star, were visible.
So celestial timing could be important as well.
Yes, the timing relative to astral deities, specific days or months, often mattered. And if you received a bad omen that was interpreted as indicating witchcraft, there were rituals specifically for that situation, too.
Did they associate specific types of witchcraft with specific outcomes?
Sometimes, yes. Our sources link Suru, or hate magic, with becoming socially detestable, and Kadabadu, which means something like seizing of the mouth magic, was linked to speech problems or disorders.
That makes intuitive sense. And the figurines, just to recap, could be made of almost anything.
Pretty much anything malleable. Tallow, wax, clay, dough, bitumen, even leftover beer, mash, or sesame pomace. The material might have had symbolic meaning, but the key was creating that representation to act upon.
And key gods were
Amash for justice and seeing the truth, Ea and his son Marduk as masters of magic and incantation, sometimes Gilgamesh as a protector figure, and Dura the fire god, especially for rituals involving burning.
Okay. And the core ideas running through all this seem to be purification, destruction of the source, and turning the magic back.
That's a great summary. Plus, invoking higher powers for aid. They use symbolic actions like undressing the patient to remove impurity, washing, crushing, or burning the figurines, all aimed at severing the connection to the witchcraft.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a huge amount of ground here, journeying into these ancient Mesopotamian anti-witchcraft practices. After this incredible deep dive, what are the main takeaways? What should we really remember from all this?
I think what really stands out is just how complex and honestly sophisticated their system of beliefs was around witchcraft. It wasn't just a vague fear.
No, it seems incredibly detailed.
Exactly. And it was deeply woven into everything, their magic, their medicine, their religion. They developed this whole array of rituals, specific incantations, using all sorts of ingredients and symbolic acts.
All to identify, fight back against, and hopefully reverse these magical attacks.
Right. It shows how seriously they took these threats, whether we see them as real or perceived. They put enormous effort into protecting themselves and their communities.
It really does highlight that, well, that deep and enduring human need to understand and maybe control the unseen forces around us, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Both the potential for harm and the hope for protection.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe here's a final thought for you, the listener. Just reflect on that enduring fascination we seem to have with the unseen, the mysterious, the potential for good and evil beyond our normal senses.
Yeah, and while these specific Mesopotamian rituals might seem, ancient and maybe alien,
Think about how different cultures, maybe even our own in subtle ways, still grapple with similar anxieties about hidden influences, bad luck, negative energy, whatever we call it now.
right, people still look for ways to understand, to protect themselves, maybe even to try and influence those unseen forces. The forms change, but perhaps some of the underlying human concerns, they resonate across millennia.